Psychology of people who spend Christmas alone. It's Christmas morning. The streets are quiet. Social media is loud. Everywhere you look, there are photos of families around the table, matching pajamas, children opening gifts, smiles that seem effortless. And while the world keeps repeating that this is the happiest day of the year, you're sitting alone, wondering how a single day managed to highlight everything you don't have. In the United States, Christmas isn't just a holiday. It's a cultural performance. Test. A symbol of belonging. And when you spend it alone, it doesn't feel neutral. It feels like you're failing something everyone else seems to pass naturally. What most people don't realize is that spending Christmas alone says far more about psychology, boundaries, and modern American life than it does about loneliness itself. Because for some people, this day hurts deeply. And for others, it feels like relief they're almost ashamed to admit. And that contradiction is where the real psychology begins. For many Americans, being alone on Christmas immediately triggers a quiet, heavy question. What does this say about me? Not because the day itself is painful, but because American culture has taught us that Christmas is proof of a successful life, a family to gather with, a place where you belong, a role you're expected to play. So when that role is missing, the absence feels personal. Some people experience Christmas alone as a sharp emotional contrast. The world outside seems warmer, louder, more connected, while their own space feels smaller and colder. Sadness mixes with shame. Not just I'm lonely, but I shouldn't be lonely on a day like this. And that belief often hurts more than the solitude itself. But there's another side that rarely gets talked about. For a different group of Americans, being alone on Christmas feels like breathing out after holding their breath all year. No forced conversations. No emotional landmines. No pretending everything is fine for the sake of tradition. In a culture that rewards constant positivity and family loyalty, choosing solitude can feel like quiet rebellion and also self-preservation. Research in the US reflects this split. While a portion of people spending Christmas alone report sadness and isolation, a surprisingly large number describe their emotional state as neutral, detached, or even calm. Not joyful, not devastated, just still. And that emotional neutrality often confuses people the most. Because when you're told this day is supposed to be magical, feeling nothing at all can feel wrong. As if numbness itself is another failure. But psychologically, numbness is often the mind's way of protecting itself from overload, especially during emotionally charged holidays. This is where social pressure quietly amplifies everything. In American media, Christmas is framed as a family reunion above all else. Commercials, movies, songs, they all reinforce the same image. Large gatherings, traditions passed down, everyone together. So when someone spends the holiday alone, comparison becomes unavoidable. Even if their reasons are practical or intentional, the mind still asks, why not me? That comparison creates a strange inner conflict. On the outside, you're supposed to feel grateful. On the inside, you might feel empty, irritated, or exhausted. And in that tension, solitude can start to feel like the only honest option left. Because being alone feels better than pretending. There are actually several very different psychological experiences hiding behind the same phrase, spending Christmas alone. For some Americans, it's not a choice at all. Distance plays a huge role in the US. Families are spread across states, sometimes across the country. Flights are expensive. Time off isn't guaranteed. Work doesn't stop just because it's a holiday. In these cases, being alone often comes with a quiet sense of loss, not dramatic sadness, but a dull feeling of being left out of something that everyone else seems to have access to. For others, Christmas alone comes after a breakup, divorce, or the death of someone important. And holidays tend to reopen grief in a very specific way. They remind people not just of who is gone, but of who they used to be when that person was still there. The contrast between past traditions and the present moment can make the emptiness feel heavier, even if day-to-day life feels manageable. Then there are people who make a conscious decision not to go home. This group is often misunderstood. In American culture, avoiding family on Christmas can be judged harshly. as if it automatically means selfishness or bitterness. But psychologically, many of these people are protecting themselves from environments that drain them, emotionally unsafe conversations, old roles they've outgrown, or dynamics that reopen wounds they've spent years trying to heal. For them, solitude isn't loneliness, it's boundaries. Introverts and emotionally burned out people often fall into this category too. After a year of constant pressure, noise, and expectations, Christmas alone can feel like recovery, a chance to slow down when the rest of the world is speeding up. And interestingly, surveys in the US show that more than half of Americans believe alone time during the holidays is essential for mental health, even if they don't openly admit wanting it for themselves. But regardless of the reason, one psychological risk stays the same. When someone already struggles with depression, anxiety, or a lack of social support, Christmas alone can magnify dark thoughts. The silence gets louder. Self-judgment becomes harsher. For these people, psychologists often recommend structure, not forced cheerfulness, but intention. Planned walk, a movie ritual, a phone call, even a short one. Something that reminds the nervous system, this day has shape, and I am still connected to the world. At the same time, studies suggest something important. When solitude is structured and self-directed, not accidental, not filled with self-blame, it can actually feel stable, even grounding. Some people report that their most honest Christmas experiences happen alone. No performance, no expectations, just a quiet check-in with themselves. And for many Americans, that's where the deeper meaning appears. Spending Christmas alone often becomes a moment of reflection. Not just about family, but about identity. About what closeness really means. About which traditions still fit, and which ones were never truly theirs to begin with. Sometimes, being alone on Christmas isn't a sign of disconnection. Sometimes, it's the first moment of choosing yourself without apologizing. That's where the psychology quietly turns. Because after the day passes, many people notice something unexpected. Nothing terrible happened. The world didn't collapse. The loneliness they feared either softened or revealed something else underneath it. For some, what rises is grief that finally has space. For others, it's relief. And for a few, it's a sharp realization: I've been measuring my life by someone else's calendar. In the US, Christmas is less just a holiday and more a social mirror. It reflects who appears included, loved, settled, and successful. When you're outside that image, the mind tends to turn the situation into a verdict. If I'm alone today, something must be wrong with me. Psychologically, that's not sadness, that's internalized comparison. But comparison doesn't ask whether your reasons are valid. It only asks whether you match the picture. What makes Christmas alone especially intense is that it compresses several fears into one day. Fear of being left behind, fear of being forgettable, fear that time is moving forward while you're standing still. Even people who are normally fine being alone can feel shaken by that mix. Yet for many Americans, this experience subtly rewires something. They start to see how much emotional labor holidays often require, how much pretending, how often togetherness comes with old roles that no longer fit. And in that clarity, some people notice that what they miss isn't family itself. It's safety, warmth, or being understood. Things that can exist outside traditional settings. This doesn't mean solitude is always the answer. It means the meaning of Christmas alone isn't fixed. It depends on whether the experience is framed as punishment or choice, as evidence of failure, or as an honest response to reality. Psychologically, the difference matters. When solitude is paired with shame, it deepens emptiness. When it's paired with self-respect, it can quietly rebuild trust in oneself. For many Americans, the most lasting effect of spending Christmas alone isn't what happens that day. It's what changes afterward. The realization that closeness doesn't have to look a certain way. That belonging isn't canceled just because you weren't in a crowded living room on December 25th. And sometimes the calm of that day becomes a reference point. Proof that being alone doesn't automatically mean being abandoned. Proof that silence isn't the same as emptiness. In a culture that constantly equates happiness with visibility, choosing quiet or surviving it can feel unsettling. But psychologically, it can also be grounding. Not because it fixes everything, but because it shows that even on the most emotionally charged day of the year, your worth isn't decided by who's sitting next to you. It's decided by whether you're allowed to exist without performing. If you want, next we can tighten this into a final, calm closing line, or adapt the tone slightly more reflective or more neutral.